Welcome to another episode of Technology for Independence with Chris Cooley. Today, he's going to be talking with the police chief of Portsmouth, Ohio, so stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Technology for Independence with Chris Cooley. Today, we're going to be talking with the police chief, Debra Brewer, a great guest that you have on today.
Last March, I was invited to a ladies group that gets together so often and goes out and learns about the city of Portsmouth, learns about different other cities. And they had the opportunity to have me in to their meeting that evening and be able to talk about technology and people with disabilities. And as I was talking about different technologies, showing different technology that we as individuals with multiple disabilities use in our daily lives, could look like a gun, it could look like a taser, it could look like some kind of a weapon. The Portsmouth, Ohio Police Chief, she reached out and asked me if I would come and speak to some of her officers. And that was a great opportunity. I love that because I want to work with them. I want them to know, come up with ideas and ways to help individuals with multiple disabilities, not be afraid of the first responders, whoever they may be. Sometimes it could be scary. Sometimes it could be, not knowing what's going on in individuals' lives. And so at those meetings with the officers, I talked about technology. I showed them the different kinds of technology that could look like a weapon, but not really a weapon. It is something that could help them and the individuals with multiple disabilities. So I just encouraged them to take a different approach and step back and take a look real quick and see what that individual has before they take any steps forward. And realizing that this individual has multiple disabilities and their communication may be technology and other services like sign language interpreters, home remote support that may help with communication. And so, I enjoyed myself and the questions that these officers had. And I gave them some great, opportunities to think about maybe just flagging individuals with multiple disabilities, putting their names in the system to help, hey, I'm coming up on this home. I'm behind a car that has a multiple disabled individual in it, and their communications may be sign language, maybe remote support that can help, or maybe even a case manager that they have their number on their list, on their system, and be able to get help if they need it in a situation that becomes scary to an individual. And sometimes it's hard to tell if an individual nowadays have, the disabilities, and because we don't wear a big T-shirt that says, I have multiple disabilities, leave me alone. We're out there normally. We're being able to enjoy our community independently, doing things on our own. And sometimes, nowadays, individual may have, some drugs may cause other individuals to act like, or some movement may look like somebody on drugs, but not really. But they have multiple disabilities, and their movement may be excitement, may be scared, may be whatever it may be. And so we've been talking about that, and I really enjoyed that opportunity. So I thought I would bring the chief police, the Debbie, here and talk a little bit about, from the day I was in training with these officers to, some tips on being safe, some tips on how to interact with an officer or a first responder, and any other. I would like to hear if there are any other ideas that had came up, in their system to be able to help an individual be safe. So an officer doesn't think that they're being unruly. They, have multiple disabilities and need to be talked to a different way. I, sometimes have to be talked too loud. Somebody needs to talk really loud for me sometimes, depending on the situation. So I'm going to let our chief police here in Portsmouth, Ohio, Debra Brewer, to talk a little bit about herself and give us some ideas on their reactions with the community, with individuals with multiple disabilities.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me today. You wanted me to say a few things about myself. I do multiple things. I'm not just a police chief. I'm a mom. I have 2 adult children, and I also have a grandchild. He just turned 5 months old today, actually, so I'm pretty happy with that. I can spoil him and send him home now. So, but I'm also a firefighter, and I am also an EMT. So I work with multiple aspects of the community. I'm not just the police officer. I work with every part of it. So when I see someone with disabilities, I try to think of different ways to help. And when you showed me all the gadgets that you have at that meeting, I was like, my guys need to see this. So the best thing that you showed me, and I'm so glad that you have it, and I hope that there are more in our community that have that, is your iPad, where you have communication with your I don't know, I don't think they're called caregivers, but your counselor maybe?
They're called remote support team.
Yes, your remote support
the
team.
remote support team does about the same thing that a in-home caregiver does.
Okay. So that to me, if you were in need and you were not able to get to a phone, you also have access to them because they can see you. I know they can see you, certain parts of your home, they can see you and what's going on in there. So if you were in distress, they could try to talk to you. And if they couldn't talk to you, then they could call us or call health services if you needed an ambulance or something like that. Or if it was something more dire, they could call law enforcement and we could come there. So I love that aspect. And then your little communication pin that you had, I just love that. That was amazing. So those things that you have that communicate with people outside of sign language or reading lips or something like that. The pen that you have where you just touch the dots, that I'd never seen that before, and I was very intrigued with that. And so were the guys. They're like, I've never seen that. So those things that you brought with you that day, and then your friend Bill, was that his name? Bill, that came with you?
Yeah.
Yes. And then he had the keyboard that he talked, and that's how he actually communicated, was through the keyboard, because he was basically nonverbal. And that helped a lot. And you talked a little bit about putting the addresses in there so we know where special needs individuals live. And that helps us a lot. So we can put that in there. And it's not just us. That way, fire and EMS also know where you live or where someone like Bill lives. And that's a big help to them. That way they know what they're going into. So it's not just for law enforcement, it's for all public services. So it helps not only us, but it helps you, and it helps with your remote service providers also.
I think, a lot of the officers, love the ideas of the technology that I have brought with me, and they love that pen. And I think that's a great communication. And also, you get to an individual that they're, you know, having a meltdown, and not being able to control, and having that pen with music on it, be able to bring that music out and do that. And I think it's a great idea, with, and I know a lot of individuals probably think, oh, I don't want my information on your I don't want my information out there. But it's not their information. That individual has multiple disabilities. You have the remote support team number, ASL number, and caseworker number or SSA number, and to be able to use those numbers as a technique to communicate. You guys would be able to call them and be like, "Hey, can you help us?" I think that's a great idea. Yeah. So, what kind of tips or anything would you be able to give us? Any tips?
I just think that if you see law enforcement, or especially law enforcement, I think if you see them coming, if there's just a way to let them know that you have that tool beforehand, because sometimes they may not know. Like, I think pretty much everybody knows you. You're well known in the community, Chris. So everybody knows you and they know you have those little gadgets. So, but for someone that doesn't know or we're not familiar with, they might want to let them know, hey, I have this, hold it by the end until we're familiar with that individual, that we know that they carry that with them. So just let them know that, this isn't what you think it is. It's not a knife. It's not a weapon. It's a communication tool. So just something like that. Let them know that I need help. I need additional help. So just things like that they need to communicate to them, and not be afraid of law enforcement or EMS or fire, because we're there to help, and we go the extra mile to help. And someone that needs that extra help, we don't care to do that. So that's and we need to be told that. And I know sometimes someone who have communication issues are afraid to tell us that, and they kind of shy away. Like there's a new person at our church, and she's got some communication issues, and she's very timid, she shies away from somebody, and it's like, I've been trying to talk to her at church and to show her that we're not the bad people, you gotta open up and talk. So it's just trying to show them that she doesn't have to be afraid of everybody.
Well, do you think that individuals with multiple disabilities are afraid to say something due to a lot of the negative things that are out there in the public eye? You think that has anything to do with it?
Oh, I'm sure it does. And is it right? No, it's not. Every person is different. Everybody communicates differently. How I say something may not be how Patrick would say it or how you would say it. And our communication styles are all different. So how we get our point across is going to be different for every individual. So some of us use your tools, some of us use our written word, and some of us use our mouths to get our point across. So it's just everybody communicates differently, and it doesn't matter as long as we are able to communicate.
One of the things that I've seen for most of us, we have never been police officers or first responders. And where we learn about the police is unfortunately through the news, and unfortunately through TV programs, and through different movies where what do? They accentuate the bad, or
Right.
the the extreme emotions of individuals. Police officers are people too.
Yes, we're all human. We're not perfect. We do make mistakes. However, um, law enforcement is not what you see on TV. It's not what you see in the movies. The majority of the officers are good people, and we are here to help. We got in this to help people. We didn't get in this to have a job, to get paid. That's not why we got in this job. We got in it because we actually have a genuine interest in helping our community grow, in getting rid of the drug problem. That's why the majority of us got in this profession to start with. Now, I'm not going to say, as with any profession, there's not some bad apples. And I'm willing to stick my neck out on this one. We don't have any of those here in Portsmouth, because I think we police ourselves here, and we don't put up with a lot of the things that go on in bigger cities. And I'm not saying that they put up with it. I just think that sometimes it takes a lot longer for things to catch up with them. You get these bigger cities, they have 4,000 plus officers. We have 45 officers. So it's much easier to go around and have people to supervise and watch what's going on. It's much easier to do that. We kind of weed them out, so to speak, and keep track of it and train. You have to train your people over and over and over and over again. You learn through repetition. So that's what we do. We teach our people. We're constantly training. Next week, we have in-service. Next week, we're doing driving. So we're trying to cut down on our crashes, on our accidents. That's what we do. Next week, every one of our officers will go through a driving course.
What's the difference between the sheriff's office and the police department?
The difference is we are in the city only, and they patrol the county. The sheriff is the foremost law enforcement agent in the county. He controls the jail and the deputies, and we just have the city.
Let's just say somebody is walking down and they're hearing impaired. An officer pulls over and asks them to stop. They keep walking and walking and walking because they don't hear them. That individual doesn't understand the demand, or just doesn't understand what you really want them to do. How are you guys, working on, educating the officers how to recognize that kind of thing? How would that be, handled with an officer showing up?
That we are working on that right this week. We actually have officers in CIT training. It's called Crisis Intervention Team Training. We actually have officers in that. Once this is done, I think we only have like 5 more officers that need to go through, and our whole department will have gone through this. We want people to recognize the difference. They may not be ignoring them. Sometimes we do get people that ignore us, and we need to recognize the difference between someone that's ignoring us and someone that is hearing impaired, or someone that just doesn't understand. Like if you take someone who falls under the autism spectrum, they may not understand what you want. And so you need to recognize that. And that's something that we are working on. And we train our people with that. We have a couple of our officers' wives who work at Vern Rice School. And I think that's perfect, because then we can ask them to come and train us. Hey, this is what you need to look for. These are some of the addresses that you can expect to encounter some of the people that are going to be maybe less compliant. That's a word I will use, less compliant, because they won't understand what you want.
The Portsmouth area is comprised of a lot of great people, very good businesses, retail stores are good, but we still have that stigma I
Yes.
guess you want to call it that. I know that the police are there to protect us from those individuals that want to do us harm. What are some steps that you find the police department are doing because of the stigma of so much drug problems?
It seems like just when we get a handle on things, it's just like another wave of a different drug comes into town, and we have to start at ground zero again. And it seems like the kids are getting younger that are getting onto the drug of the day, shall we say, and it's just getting more difficult. And it really breaks my heart that kids in high school and younger are on drugs, and that's why we have the stigma that we have. And it doesn't matter. It's not, they can say, oh, it's because they live in the east end of town. That's not true. It's everywhere. It's people from all income levels. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter. If they want drugs, they'll go get drugs, and they think it's cool. And when it's not, because you're ruining your life.
Those that are addicted, are they considered disabled?
To a degree. We have a lot of rehabilitation facilities in our area, and they will take you, but until that individual decides that they want to get off drugs and stay off drugs, they can go to rehab as many times as they want to, but until they make that choice that it's going to stick.
Working with your officers about people with disabilities and putting them through training is awesome. And them being able to identify, a person that is, maybe on something or someone that is not on something, they're different. And I know it's hard in any city or any state that, it's hard to identify when you come up on a scene and not really know. And I was wondering, I know you said you had some parents that come and talk and help. What about, the individual, getting the individuals into your meeting, or, like myself, get into your meeting, talk about, some of the fears that they have and ways of helping each other. And I'm glad that you were able to have me back in March to be able to talk and bring more awareness because, we're all still learning about different things in our lives. And we don't know everything about everybody, but learning and being taught, is a great way to do it. And, I'm hoping, maybe, I could get back out there in the community and do more, work with them and work with all the first responders, from service dogs to technology, other people with disability.
You just keep doing what you're doing, Chris. You do a good thing for this community.
What are some things you would like to share to the viewing audience that helps us?
Some of the things that I would like for people to think about is don't judge people by their appearance, by the way they talk, and by some of the equipment that they use. That's how they communicate. They're no different than you. You may be different to them. They may find you odd, but we're all God's children. So that's what we need to look at, and just look out for each other. That's what we need to do, is keep each other safe. And if you see something that's not right, or see someone that's bothering somebody else, if you don't feel comfortable getting involved, call 911, call the police, let us know so we can go get involved.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. I find it very fascinating, the human touch of the police officers is very, very true. And I want to commend you and the police force for the really good work that you do.
Well, thank you.
I think it shows, and I think eventually more and more individuals will follow some of your advice. Chris, great guest. I really appreciate you having her on.
Thank you.
We're talking with Chris Cooley, Technology for Independence. His guest has been Police Chief Debra Brewer. Thank you.